It was a cold morning in Washington, D.C., the kind that sent a biting chill through the city's corridors of power. But inside the Department of Justice, the temperature was rising. Pam Bondi, the newly appointed United States Attorney General under President Donald Trump, had just received a file, one that could change the course of history. The document was marked confidential in bold red ink, its pages filled with classified judicial maneuvers carried out by Judge James Boasberg, a figure deeply entrenched in the nation's legal system. The name alone carried weight. Boasberg, the chief judge of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court (FISA), had long been a gatekeeper of secretive government surveillance cases. But what Bondi held in her hands wasn't just another case of judicial discretion. This was something far more sinister. As Bondi scanned the pages, a frown crept across her face. The contents of the file suggested backdoor deals, clandestine approvals, and an attempt to obstruct justice at the highest level. Boasberg, known for his rulings that often shielded government agencies from scrutiny, had allegedly covered up evidence that could have exposed a massive surveillance abuse scandal. Even more disturbing, the documents hinted that he had actively helped suppress key information regarding the FBI's involvement in illegally obtaining warrants against American citizens. Bondi's heart pounded. If this information was true and if she could prove it, then Boasberg wasn't just guilty of corruption, he was guilty of treason. The smoking gun. The document in her hands had one crucial attachment, a leaked memo from a high-ranking intelligence official, someone within the National Security Agency who had grown tired of the unchecked power wielded by judges like Boasberg. The memo detailed a secret meeting held inside the federal courthouse, a meeting in which Boasberg had allegedly instructed government lawyers on how to skirt constitutional protections and ensure certain evidence never saw the light of day. Bondi felt the weight of the moment. She had spent years as Florida's Attorney General, taking on tough legal battles and standing firm against corruption, but this was something else entirely. She needed to act fast. Trump's war room. Within hours, Bondi was inside the Oval Office, the documents spread across the resolute desk. President Trump leaned forward, his eyes scanning the damning evidence in front of him. Across the room, key members of the administration sat in tense silence: White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Attorney General Bill Barr, and National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. "This is bigger than Watergate," Trump muttered, shaking his head. "If this gets out, it's not just Boasberg. We're talking about an entire network of corruption within the judiciary." Bondi nodded. "Mr. President, we have two options. We either go public immediately and risk a political firestorm, or we dig deeper, find indisputable evidence, and make sure Boasberg is formally charged before the media can spin it." Trump exhaled sharply. "I don't like waiting, but I don't want the fake news to bury this either. How soon can we get a grand jury on this?" Bondi hesitated. "If we move too fast, he'll have time to cover his tracks. I say we make him think we're unaware, keep him comfortable while we build an airtight case. When the time is right, we strike." The room was silent. Then, slowly, Trump nodded. "All right, Pam, you're in charge. Take him down." As Bondi left the Oval Office, her mind was already racing. She had just made a high-stakes gamble. One that could either expose one of the biggest judicial scandals in American history or backfire in a way that could destroy her career. One thing was certain. Judge Boasberg had no idea what was coming for him. Pam Bondi had faced tough legal fights before, but this was different. Taking down a sitting federal judge, especially one as powerful as James Boasberg, was a war, not a battle. If she miscalculated, it wouldn't just be her career at risk, the entire Trump administration could face blowback. To move forward, she needed a team she could trust. Assembling the strike force. Bondi knew the FBI was compromised, too many deep state operatives lurked within its ranks. Instead, she turned to a small, elite team within the Department of Justice known as the Special Integrity Task Force (SITF), a covert unit designed to investigate corruption at the highest levels of government. Her first call was to Elliot Kane, a former federal prosecutor turned whistleblower. If anyone understood how to navigate the dangerous waters of legal warfare against a powerful insider, it was him. "Elliot, I need you in D.C. now," Bondi said, pacing her office. "Pam, this must be serious if you're calling me directly," Kane replied. "Who's the target?" Bondi hesitated. "Judge Boasberg." There was a long silence. Then Kane let out a low whistle. "You're playing with fire, Pam." "I know," she said. "But if we don't stop this now, the entire judicial system is compromised. He's been covering up illegal surveillance, obstructing justice, and God knows what else. I have the files, but I need airtight proof. Kane sighed. All right, I'm in. But if Boasberg gets wind of this, he won't go down quietly. That's why we have to be smarter. Following the money. Bondi and her team needed a smoking gun, something that would leave no room for denial. She tasked Kane with looking into Boasberg's financial records, suspecting that the judge had been receiving illicit payments for his favorable rulings in classified FISA court cases. Within days, Kane uncovered something shocking. There's an offshore account, Kane reported, sliding a folder across Bondi's desk. Cayman Islands. Millions of dollars funneled through shell companies tied to, get this, a private security contractor with direct links to intelligence agencies. Bondi's eyes widened. You're telling me he's being paid off by defense contractors to approve illegal surveillance requests? Kane nodded grimly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Bondi's stomach tightened. This wasn't just about judicial corruption anymore, this was a national security crisis. If defense contractors were bribing a FISA judge to allow illegal spying on American citizens, it meant the intelligence agencies weren't just breaking the law, they were weaponizing the legal system itself. Boasberg strikes back. Just as Bondi and Kane began assembling their evidence, something unexpected happened. Late one evening, as Bondi left her office, her phone buzzed. It was an anonymous message. Stop digging or you'll regret it. Her blood ran cold. Somebody knew. Before she could react, a black SUV pulled up beside her. Its windows tinted so dark she couldn't see inside. The vehicle idled for a moment, watching her, threatening her. Then, as quickly as it had arrived, the SUV sped off. Bondi's heart pounded. She had expected resistance, but this was different. This was a warning. She pulled out her phone and dialed Kane. They know, she said breathlessly. Boasberg knows. Kane cursed under his breath. We need to move faster. If he realizes we have the offshore accounts, he'll start erasing everything. Bondi gritted her teeth. Then we hit him before he has the chance. As she hung up, she knew one thing for certain. The fight had just begun. Pam Bondi knew time was running out. Judge Boasberg wasn't just aware of the investigation, he was actively working to shut it down. The anonymous threats, the black SUV, the offshore accounts, everything pointed to a much larger conspiracy than she had initially suspected. She had to act, and she had to act fast. Calling in the cavalry. Bondi arranged a clandestine meeting at a secure location outside Washington, D.C., a private estate owned by a former intelligence officer who had turned against the deep state. Inside a dimly lit study, Bondi sat across from three of the most powerful people in the Trump administration. Mark Meadows, the White House Chief of Staff. John Ratcliffe, the Director of National Intelligence. Sidney Powell, a legal powerhouse with deep knowledge of judicial corruption. Bondi spread out the documents on a table. We have enough to open a grand jury investigation against Boasberg, she said firmly. But we need an ironclad strategy to keep it from being sabotaged. Sidney Powell leaned forward, studying the financial records. You realize what this means, don't you? She said. Boasberg isn't acting alone. He's part of a coordinated effort to manipulate the judiciary. The question is, who else is involved? Ratcliffe exhaled sharply. If Boasberg goes down, he might take others with him. The deep state won't let this happen without a fight. Mark Meadows nodded. We need to control the narrative before they do. If the media gets a hold of this without context, they'll spin it against us. Bondi already had a plan. We leak just enough to force Boasberg to react, but not enough for him to know how deep we're going. Then, once he panics, we drop the grand jury indictment. The leak that shook Washington. The next morning, an explosive news story hit the media. FISA judge under investigation for ethics violations. It was vague, but it was enough to send shockwaves through Washington. Suddenly, Boasberg was on the defensive. Within hours, Bondi received a frantic call from one of her sources within the FBI. You've rattled the cage, the agent warned. Boasberg just ordered the deletion of classified court records. He's trying to cover his tracks. Bondi clenched her jaw. That was the mistake she had been waiting for. The arrest warrant. By evening, Bondi and Kane had assembled the final piece of the puzzle, a formal request to convene a grand jury against Judge Boasberg. The evidence was overwhelming. Bank records linking Boasberg to offshore accounts. Internal memos proving he coordinated with intelligence officials to suppress evidence. A sworn affidavit from a whistleblower confirming Boasberg had personally approved illegal surveillance requests. The paperwork was submitted. Now all they had to do was wait for the approval. Boasberg makes his move. Just as Bondi was about to leave her office, her phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Pam Bondi, a distorted voice said, "You don't know who you're messing with." Before she could respond, the call cut off. Bondi's hands clenched into fists. Boasberg wasn't just running scared, he was getting desperate. And that meant he was about to make a big mistake. She turned to Kane. It's time to take him down. And this time, there would be no escape. Washington, D.C. was a city built on secrets, but Pam Bondi was about to drag one of its biggest into the light. With the grand jury process underway, Judge James Boasberg was officially under investigation, but he still held power, and Bondi knew he would use every trick in the book to stop her. Boasberg's last stand. Just hours after Bondi's team filed the indictment request, a federal judge, one of Boasberg's allies, attempted to dismiss it on procedural grounds. The move reeked of desperation. "They're trying to stall us," Bondi told Kane. "We need to act before they bury this in legal delays." Meanwhile, Boasberg himself was nowhere to be found. Reports suggested he had gone into a secluded private estate in Maryland, away from prying eyes. "He's in damage control mode," Kane muttered. "Probably shredding documents as we speak." But Bondi had already anticipated this. The sting operation. One of Bondi's secret weapons was an inside informant, an intelligence officer who had worked closely with Boasberg in the past. That night, the informant delivered a crucial piece of evidence. An audio recording of Boasberg speaking privately with a senior FBI official. In the recording, Boasberg could be heard saying, "The president is too reckless. We need to do what's necessary to keep control. If they push too hard, we'll bury them in bureaucracy. That's what the system is for. I don't care what the law says. If we don't hold power, someone else will." Bondi's heart pounded as she listened. This wasn't just judicial corruption, this was proof that Boasberg had been an active participant in a coordinated effort to undermine democracy itself. The arrest warrant is signed. Armed with the recording, Bondi took a direct approach. She called a federal judge, one of the few she trusted, and presented the evidence. Within hours, an arrest warrant was issued for Judge Boasberg. The charge? Obstruction of justice, conspiracy to commit fraud, and abuse of judicial power. The next morning, the FBI descended on Boasberg's estate. As federal agents entered the property, they found him inside, attempting to destroy documents on his computer. But it was too late. They had him. As Boasberg was led away in handcuffs, the media exploded. Breaking news: federal judge arrested for abuse of power had secretly manipulated surveillance cases. The moment was historic. For years, corrupt officials had operated in the shadows. But today, one of the most powerful was being brought to justice. But Bondi knew this fight wasn't over yet. Because if Boasberg was willing to fall on his sword, who was he protecting? Pam Bondi had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. With Judge Boasberg in custody, the media firestorm was impossible to contain. His arrest wasn't just a legal earthquake, it was a political nuke. Cable news networks ran the story on repeat. Social media exploded with debates. Some called it justice served, others screamed political persecution. But behind the scenes, the real war was unfolding. Boasberg's first move: bargain or burn. Locked in a high-security federal facility, Boasberg had two choices: cooperate with investigators and expose the full network of judicial corruption, stay silent and hope his powerful allies could still save him. His first move was a shock to everyone. Through his attorneys, Boasberg sent a request for a private meeting with Pam Bondi. Bondi sat across from him in the interrogation room, her expression unreadable. "You wanted to talk?" Boasberg's hands were cuffed, but his arrogance remained intact. "You think you've won," he said, voice calm. "But you don't understand how deep this goes." Bondi leaned forward. "Then why don't you enlighten me?" Boasberg smirked. "Because if I do, I won't make it to trial." Bondi didn't flinch. "You mean your friends in the intelligence agencies? The ones who've been pulling strings for years?" Boasberg let out a dry laugh. "You think I'm the end of the line? I'm just a piece on the board, Bondi. There are players in this game you haven't even seen yet." She met his gaze, unwavering. "Then start talking. Because right now, you're the only one facing life in prison." Silence filled the room. Then, Boasberg sighed. "There's one name you need to look into," he finally said. "A man named Daniel Mercer." Bondi's pulse quickened. "Who is he?" Boasberg's smirk returned. "Let's just say, he's the one who makes sure people like me don't get caught." The mystery of Daniel Mercer. Bondi and her team worked around the clock, trying to track down Daniel Mercer. The problem? He didn't exist. At least not on paper. No driver's license. No tax records. No birth certificate. But after a deep dig into classified intelligence files, Kane found something chilling. Mercer had once been a top CIA operative. A man with no official past, but a long shadow in black operations. He's not just some bureaucrat, Kane said grimly. He's the guy who cleans up messes. If Boasberg is telling the truth, this guy is the one who decides who stays in power and who disappears. Bondi exhaled. Then we need to find him before he finds us. The assassination attempt. That night, Bondi left her office late. She was extra cautious, knowing the danger she was in. But even that wasn't enough. As she walked to her car, a dark figure stepped from the shadows. She barely had time to react before she saw the gun. Time slowed. A single gunshot rang through the parking lot, but not from the assassin's gun. The man collapsed instantly, a bullet through his chest. Bondi turned, stunned. Kane stood behind her, pistol smoking. "Guess we found Mercer," Kane muttered. But as they approached the body, it wasn't Daniel Mercer. Just another disposable operative sent to silence her. Bondi's blood ran cold. They weren't just covering their tracks anymore. They were declaring war. Trump responds, the final blow. By morning, the White House had taken action. President Trump personally addressed the nation, exposing the judicial corruption, the illegal surveillance, and the deep state's role in covering it up. "The American people deserve justice," Trump said. "And under my watch, no one, not even the most powerful judges, will be above the law." The investigation expanded overnight. More judges, FBI officials, and intelligence officers were placed under scrutiny. And then Daniel Mercer vanished. No trace. No leads. Gone. Epilogue: a new war begins. Judge Boasberg was convicted on multiple counts of corruption, obstruction, and abuse of power. But the war wasn't over. Because if Mercer was still out there, the deep state wasn't finished. Pam Bondi knew one thing for sure. This was just the beginning.